or you have questions. We will definitely have a lot of time for questions. And yeah, and feel free to share. And this is a good time for people to connect in a different medium, speaking of mediums. So yeah. And yes, to answer your question on that, Inga, we will have you join up at the stage, and it might be the simplest if you'd like to. You do have a way to point your avatar away from the screens, but if you do want to go and click on the screen that has the slide on it, then you can do that. It just means that you don't see yourself as an avatar looking out of the audience. And for some people, that isn't as comfortable. So they might just stand with their avatar looking off to the side, which is fine too. So, yeah. Thanks for sharing your LinkedIn profile, Richard. And looking forward to hearing more about what you guys are all up to. And feel free also to, if you would like to, share as just what brought you here tonight. That's always really interesting and helpful.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Hi.
Hi, yeah, this is Richard. So yeah, I'm in San Francisco now, but originally from Chicago. So I'll be going to these meetups in person. But I thought it was cool that you guys also did it virtually. So it's my first time
Oh, that's
attending
great.
virtually. And then
Awesome.
I'm also part of what's called this Spatial Collective online, and they also had like a meetup in person or not in person, but a meetup like online using avatars, Ready Player Me avatars. So we did that earlier today. So it's kind of funny to like go from that to go to this and kind of like see the
Yeah.
differences.
Was this also using Frame, or what platform was it on?
It was using a different one. It was called Vertway, but it was
Oh, I've
also
heard
like
of Vertway.
Hello. At this point, please come forward, grab snacks if you'd like to. Take your seats. We are going to get started. We're about a minute late. Tom, are we streaming? We are streaming. Excellent.
Well,
yeah,
welcome.
like very similar.
A couple more
Great.
seconds. We're just helping people in the physical space make their way to the seats, please. Come on, Noma. I see you back there.
Does this one also work in VR?
It does. It does. It's not as it does work in VR. I will say there's a little bit glitchiness to it, so it's a little easier to come in on computer.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and the Vertway,
Right.
they think they're just web based, so not even in VR. But they say that the demand, isn't there for VR.
Okay, here we go. Oops, I lost my frame. There we go. Yes. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, sorry, give me a second. I just lost my slide controller. What happened there? There we go. Share screen, entire screen. Oops, that's not working. Hey, there it is. Sorry, guys. One more technical difficulty here. Share. Losing my control. All right. Sorry about the delay. Time for us to get started. So, welcome. Wow, we got a lot of people here tonight. This is great. I'm going to take a picture of this before we go. Welcome to the next evolution. Tonight, we are here to discuss how immersive technology is made. My name is Matt Wren. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the founder of VR Chicago and The Next Evolution. My passions and expertise span a lot of emerging technologies, and that's all I'm going to say about myself. If you'd like to learn more about me, I'll talk to you after the show. Or feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with everybody. The Next Evolution AWE Nite Chicago, for those of you who don't know this and haven't been here before, this event series is now and always has been 100% free to attend, and if we can keep it that way, it always will be 100% free to attend. With that said, please, if you haven't already, consider donating to support the event. This is a QR code. It'll take you straight to our donation. It's not tracking. Okay. Why are my slides not tracking? How about that? That work? That's better. Okay, so now I don't really want to go back and go through my other slides, but there they all are. These are our presenters tonight, and I'll skip back to where we are. So, with that said, love the live event glitches. We haven't done this since December, so it's been a bit. Please consider donating to keep this programming possible. I'll flash this up again at the end of the event, but that QR code will take you to a donation page. We are excited to announce that we have locked in a venue for our Demo Day 2025. It will be taking place at Illinois Institute of Technology. We were here last year, and for those of you who were here, we sold out the room and frankly over capacity the space. So we needed a bigger space, so we're moving. And we're looking to grow the event. For any of you who are interested in actually being involved with the Technology Demo Day, please reach out to us. With that said, the Next Evolution is also AWE Nite Chicago. There are more than 30 AWE nights all over the world. You can scan this QR code for a 20% discount off a 3-day pass to AWE USA 2025, which will be taking place in Long Beach, California in June. With that said, save the dates. AWE USA will be taking place June 10th through 12th in Long Beach, Asia, August 24th to 26th in Singapore, and United XR Europe, December 8th through 10th in Brussels. Ooh, they're moving it this year. You can also attend live online courses at AWE Academy or check out awexr.com for more information. We are also beyond grateful this year to have an annual sponsor, UL Solutions. They sponsored the entire year for the 2025 event series, so thank you very much, UL Solutions. We will be working with you a lot more throughout the year. Thank you very much. And with that said, I would like to introduce our venue sponsor from 1871. Who's going to come up and introduce the space.
For the plug, Matt. Always appreciate it. Hey guys, welcome to 1871. Anybody's first time here? I thought I saw some new faces. Thanks for being here. I love to just kind of share a little bit about who we are, what we do. So 1871, we're a nonprofit incubator and startup hub. So we're here to support startups from all the way from like the early stage, the idea, all the way up to growth and corporates. So we do that through a variety of programming, events, in-person support, mentors, etc. We're more than just that. We're also a co-working space. We have lots of events that are free and open to the public. Love to see you at them. We have International Women's Day coming up on the 6th. It's going to be awesome. I hope to see you all there. If you want to learn more about 1871, what we do, check us out. It's easy, 1871.com. And I'll be at the desk till 7 if you want to pop by. Thanks.
Thank you. We do need to also mention our other venue sponsors. So we do a lot of events here at 1871. We also do events up at 2112 Chicago, which is Chicago's Creative Technologies Incubator up by Fort Knox Studios at the Expressway and Montrose Avenue. We'll be there next month for our event. With all of that said, I would like to introduce our virtual sponsor. I should say I will let our virtual sponsor introduce herself. Caroline?
Hey, everybody. My name's Caroline Dennis, and I always enjoy these conversations, these discussions. I am with 2 Degrees, and my passion centers around digital data sovereignty, digital preserving technologies, Web3, health equity, and social well-being. In addition to VR AR Chicago and XR Women, which I'll talk about in a minute. I'm also part of Symphony. It's a global sustainability accelerator building metrics for an IEEE standard for sustainable smart cities. So I'd also like to talk a bit about XR Women, and we're really thrilled to have Robin Mulder here with us, who is a very big part of the leadership team, and Inga, who's also a part of our XR community. So XR Women is a global community dedicated to, we have over 1,200 women from 60 countries. That's incredible, right? We're dedicated to advancing innovation, leadership, and collaboration in immersive technologies. And since its founding in 2020, over 200 women have taken the stage, sharing their insights and their expertise and passion for immersive technology. And this month, we're actually excited in a few days, and that's actually where Robin is right now in Sarasota, Florida. XR Women is hosting an event called Thrive in 2025. It's a big milestone. It's XR Women's 200th event in virtual worlds with an in-person multi-day symposium to gather innovators, leaders, and creatives to explore the next frontier of immersive technology. And the symposium also deepens XR Women's partnership with Ringling College of Art and Design, which is the first XR Women student chapter. So this is a really important organization. Please see me if you have any questions about XR Women or Robin, and we're excited about our connection. So we have our virtual panelists. As you can see, I called it a little bit like the Brady Bunch, but it's so much more than that. We're in a space called Frame VR, which is a web XR platform, and that means that we can access it from our browser, which is pretty incredible. That means that you can enter this environment on your laptop or VR headset, or even your cell phone, just with a web browser. We also have a lot of great community partners joining us tonight. Oh, you guys already covered that. Yes, I'll let you cover that, Matt, and let me turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Caroline. So as Caroline was mentioning, we do have a lot of community partners that help us present this event. We have 2 Degrees IO, which Caroline mentioned. We have Envision, Patch Reality, the Independent Game Developers Association of Chicago. We would also like to thank, for those of you, I see a lot of people enjoying these, our beverage sponsors, which are Revolution Brewing and System Seltzer. I'm really happy to have them sponsoring our beverages at the events. And with all of that said, let's talk about why we're here. Sorry, let me make sure. Yeah, there we go. So immersive technologies, virtual reality, augmented reality, when you're actually building these, it's built through a combination of digital assets and specialized platforms, and they require distribution systems. At its core, extended reality is content made up of data like anything else that you see on a computer. So there's images, there's 3D models, there's videos, there's sounds. This is all just data, and it's created using tools like Blender if you're using 3D modeling, or if you're actually using like photogrammetry to capture a 3D space, you have technologies like LiDAR. And these assets kind of define the look and the feel of the things that you're experiencing when you're actually working with immersive technologies. But the assets themselves don't do it alone. That's we can see those things on a computer, we can see those a lot of ways. When you start wanting to bring them to life, it usually requires an XR platform, something usually like a gaming engine such as Unity, Unreal Engine, or Godot. And these platforms allow developers, just show of hands, how many of you are developers, XR developers in the room? Everyone else look around if you'd like to meet some. So developers generally will use these types of platforms so that they can kind of take all of those assets and prepare them so that they can be used in ways where users can navigate them or manipulate the objects or engage with these digital assets. And again, it's great to have the digital assets, and then you have this environment that you're putting them in a gaming engine, but you really can't experience it unless you have something such as a VR headset or AR glasses, and that's what we call the distribution platform. That's how it's coming about. So anything that we're doing in XR requires those 3 things. You've got to have the content itself, you've got to have the platform that turns the content into something you can experience, and then you've got to have the way that it's being distributed so users can actually interact with it. And it's kind of a matter of understanding that those are the pieces that have to go together to realize how you actually create immersive content. And we're going to have a whole lot of people here tonight to talk about exactly how they do that. And so with that, I'm going to introduce our first presenter for the evening, or I should say our first presenters for the evening. One is here in person, one is here virtually. So Alex, where are you? I can't see you. There he is. Come on up, Alex. Let me introduce Reality Bites team. First, I'm going to actually introduce Lauren, who's here virtually. I don't know if you can get him on the camera, Tom. Lauren is the manager of Enterprise Gen AI at Chicago Public Schools, and he's the co-founder of Reality Bites. As such, he's been working in VR since 2017 and has seen the evolution of this technology from tethered headsets through to the standalone devices we're using today. Having been involved in VR since 2017, Alex can speak to the evolution of experience ideas and the execution of new projects and designs, and he'll be able to walk through all the details of the projects as well as how the designs became more detailed over time. With that said, go ahead.
Test. Perfect. Thank you, Matt, for that well-read synopsis there. So yes, I am Alex Paul. I'm the co-founder of Reality Bites. And at this point in our company's history, we work with professional sports teams to create fan experiences and bring the fan engagement to a new, unique level. What we have queued up within our presentation, some of you have come over to the booth already, is our current project with the Washington Wizards of the NBA. Our work with professional sports teams started around 2019 with the hometown Chicago Bears. We really had no expectations going into that outside of it was their 100th anniversary season, and they were looking to do something unique and different. From there, Lauren and I kind of guided them on their journey and a lot of hand-holding to introduce virtual reality to them, the possibilities of what you can do in VR, and started ideating on what would be cool, sort of unique experiences that fans would like to engage with. In those ensuing years, we've worked with other teams, and we've gotten to a point now with the Washington Wizards where, personally, I think it's our best work of blending a lot of different elements into an experience that's very easy to navigate for the fans. Yeah, why don't we do that? So I'm going to talk really quickly because the video will not stop. What you're seeing here, or actually, Tom, if you can pause for a second. No pausing. Okay, so actually go back. I'll set the stage first. So what you'll be seeing within this video is a foundation environment that takes place in Washington, D.C. The Lincoln Memorial's on one side, the Washington Memorial's on the other side. To add to the aesthetic of Washington, D.C., we added cherry blossoms around the cherry blossoms around the court. And then within the court, the fan that's in the headset has the opportunity to check out a few different timed experiences. In this case, one is a theater room that gives the teams the power to kind of put different branding videos in there, whether it's opening the season, whether it's all-star voting, whether it's something community event related. This is their opportunity to kind of engage their fans with a short video with QR codes that are actually in it as well. A pop-a-shot game, so fans can actually test the physics of shooting a basketball. The game is timed and it tracks high scores for data elements. And then our last piece is a museum that we created that links the Washington Wizards history, which was the Bullets, to a new generation of fans that might not know why the team matters and who some of the legacy stars were. So Tom, or Matt, now we can go to the video. So everything in here is a branding opportunity for teams too. You see some of the banners on the gates. The Wizards are also doing theme nights, such as Noche Night to celebrate Land America, and Harry Potter Night later in April. I think you get the gist of what they're celebrating there. But there's sponsors involved, so their branding will replace some of those flags. Don't need the sound for the video, but the theater room, pretty self-explanatory. This idea came from our work with the previous NBA team around all-star voting. Different clips were queued up for the players that are on the ballot. Once they were done with the experience, they could fill out the all-star ballot right there at the game. Teams do have the opportunity to switch those assets out a few times a year, again, depending on what sort of campaign might be going on. Here is the Hall of Fame room that we built for them. Different assets here from their art team at the Wizards. Each of the player mannequins you see here are players that have retired numbers with the Wizards. For Noche Night, the placards that you see there that accompany the jerseys will be in Spanish, as well as piping in game broadcast video from the archives in Spanish as well. But this was important for Lauren and I because we were big into history. We like building kind of exhibits like this. This is a really good opportunity, again, for teams with fans internationally who might never make it to a Wizards game or are just becoming fans to learn more about the team and really identify with them. The assets are relatively easy to create once we get some of the art pieces. So we have visions on adding championship trophies and banners and photos throughout the years that will have some sort of interactive engagement with them. For the Pop-A-Shot game, we're still working on the physical, but what we've liked in the evolution of this is the tracking capabilities for teams. So whether it's an email address at the end and bringing in a team sponsor for the top 3 high scores, this is cool for fans who get engaged with to actually shoot basketballs. And from a team standpoint, this is an opportunity to kind of glean some sort of data points with their fans. You'll notice too at the top, and this is something that we've learned over time, you want to time each of these experiences so that fans aren't in it for 20 minutes at a time and having a restless line at the game. So with the theater room, with this game, as well as the museum, there's a shot clock that lets the user know that, you know, you have about 45 seconds to a minute with each of these and not lollygaggle within it. Capital One is one of the sponsors with the Wizards, but we'll also have Ticketmaster and Michelob as part of the newer theme nights.
All right, thanks, Alex. So really quick, just want to ask you guys a couple questions, and I'm going to toss it over to, since you did all the talking, I'm going to ask Lauren a question. So Lauren, the main thing I'm going to ask you, even though, you know, Alex did a great job explaining, can you talk a little bit about kind of how you guys are developing these custom experiences? What does the creative process look like when you're building these immersive environments?
Yeah, so as Alex mentioned, the first thing we do really is educate the clients on virtual reality and what's possible, because they're really usually starting with no understanding of what's done. And so they typically stick very much to what can they do in a physical space and don't actually think about the possibilities of taking advantage of a virtual environment. And so really explaining to them the possibilities, coming up with unique ideas for them, talking to them about what's most important to them. And so that's how an example like the museum concept for the Wizards came up with regards to their retired numbers and the players associated with each of them. And then kind of guiding them through that journey. So doing iterations of the builds, letting them experiment with the builds, provide feedback, and then kind of going from there. So to make sure that they really are a part of the design process. We're not just building an environment and handing it over. We're doing basically draft environments, and throughout even those, we'll come up with new ideas, talk to them about it, push it out, because we also, since as an example, the Washington Wizards are in Washington and we're in Chicago, we manage their headsets virtually, so we can push out environments immediately to their headsets, even though we're nowhere near them. And so that allows us to actually be really flexible with the edits that we're making to the environment. And so we can, you know, something that we include in the design also is annual updates. So as an example, those videos that were shown in the theater room, if they want to change that out for a theme night, or if they want to change it out year over year, or any other components that they might need to change out from one build to the next, we could easily make that change and then push it directly out to their headsets for them to have.
Thank you very much. Okay, Alex, I'm gonna throw 2 questions at you that are, you know,
Okay.
we're running short on time, so I'll try to make them quick.
Okay.
But you also have a background in healthcare technology, and one of the things, and sports branding, and one of the things that you mentioned was the concept of the branding within the environments. Can you talk a little bit, about how you're approaching the sponsors of the teams to actually get them to engage with us as well, to brand these and frankly, get the teams more engaged because they're not paying as much. But then also any sort of differences or anything you really want to touch on in terms of development for healthcare as well.
Starting with the first question, I would say, admittedly, this has been one of the harder things to do with team conversations because teams certainly want to get sponsors involved to offset some of the costs of the build out. It's almost a catch-22 because sponsors don't necessarily like getting on the meetings to learn more about this. So they have these preconceived notions of what VR is and the potential limitations. So if they're not bought in, but they're not watching or not coming to the table to learn about it, you kind of hit a dead end. Thankfully, with the teams that we have worked with, they have been a little bit more gracious of taking more meetings. I think the ability to kind of look at each piece of the VR environment has helped. When we first started working with teams several years ago, we didn't really have a good idea of like how we would want to layer in sponsorship. Was it going to be a video? Was it just going to have like a sign somewhere? And as we kept building new mock-ups for new teams, we got a lot more creative of how you layer that in. Whether, as you saw with the hands shooting the basketball, whether that turns into a branding environment with Robin Hood gloves, which is one of the Wizard sponsors, or just space that's very subtle. It's not overpowering. So like for the Wizards banners that you saw on the gates, that's a really easy way of putting in a sponsor in the background. So it's not just thrown in the fan's face and the fan has this feeling of being monetized by the team. It's subtly back there, and the sponsor can know that their branding there's awareness there, as well as in the theater room. In terms of healthcare technology, it's been a long time since I worked in healthcare technology. I don't know where VR outside of surgery would be a huge impact, where you actually can simulate some of the mechanisms of your training with a cadaver.
Okay, I'll let you go on that.
Okay.
That's a bit of it. But Lauren, really quick, because we're running way over on time here. But Lauren, you're managing enterprise Gen AI for Chicago Public Schools. How do you see AI playing a role in the immersive content creation space?
I think there's a lot of AI will play a big role in various components of it. I think there's already AI generating like 3D models. So putting uploading a photograph and having an AI system generate a 3D version of that photograph. So I think it's going to play a role in that and asset development. It'll play a role in it, like NPCs. So if you actually start having other characters, non-player characters in the environment with you, having some form of AI that the character that's powering the character. So you're actually in a virtual space having conversations with an AI system that is an actual avatar. I think there's much more that it's going to, many more roles that it's going to play in that. But I think those are two examples that come to mind right off the top.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Alex. You guys will be back for the open Q&A from the audience. So again, if you guys have any questions for them, we will go to an open Q&A after all the presenters have presented. You can just turn the microphone off and leave it on the table or the chair. And at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Caroline to introduce one of our virtual presenters. So Caroline, you there?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Well, I feel like it's interesting that all of the, at least here in the virtual space, that I heard the year 2016 come up several times. And Inga has actually been in this space since probably before that time. Inga, is that right? I think we chatted about that a little bit beforehand, right?
It's been over 8 years. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's just say that Inga has been in the XR and immersive technology space for a long time. She's the founder and CEO of Shapes XR. And that's a tool that's being used by many famous apps on the MetaQuest store, as well as big enterprises. Inga has been building XR for the last 8 years, and on her journey to make Shapes XR the industry standard for 3D spatial design and collaboration. Really, really thrilled that you're joining us tonight, Inga. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. It's a huge pleasure to be here today with you. And I wish I actually attend this in person, but probably in October when I come for Chicago Marathon. But anyway, Shapes XR is actually the journey. And it took me 4 years to realize that we have to build a platform that would enable better apps, high quality apps that truly feel like natural for this new medium, and also unlock this to people who do not know Unity or Unreal, but like no coding skills required to present your concept and your vision. So basically, after building for XR for almost 4 years, I realized that we have to solve the content problem. And the content problem is such that building content for the headset or glasses on a flat screen is quite a challenge. And there is a big gap when you put that to the headset, and a lot of great ideas just get buried because of that. So if you go to the next slide, because I can't do that. Yeah, so a little bit about myself. I have corporate, I'm a computer scientist by education and have corporate background, but I was thrilled when I tried the headset almost 8 years ago. I mean, it was absolutely clear to me that this is such a powerful new medium that is gonna totally change the way we work, we entertain, we learn. And it was so clear because you kind of inside 3D, you are at actual human scale, and this can unlock so many use cases that are absolutely not possible to do on a flat screen. So what about Shapes on the next slide? So the initial vision almost 4 years ago was that, XR apps need spatial creation tools. So if you build an experience or virtual game, it makes total sense to envision that in a headset. So inside 3D, because it's not just 360, right? It's a lot about the spatial relations, where your UI is going to be, how the user is going to interact with that UI. How can you make sure, because you can't control where the user is going to look at. So there were like so many very specific problems to this medium that I was waiting when someone built that, but then we built Shapes and released it on store in November 2021, just like 2 weeks after Facebook became Meta. And eventually, a lot of use cases evolved, which is very inspiring for the real world design as well as XR apps. Because when we speak about spatial 3D, there is a lot in common, right? Because our XR content is spatial 3D, right? It's not flat screen 3D, but our real world is also spatial 3D because, I mean, everything has scale and distance. So it doesn't matter if you're building, healthcare training. For example, you ask like, what else can we do in healthcare, right? Not just the training for the surgeons. I mean, one of our clients is planning a hospital in VR because it's super important for them to envision, how the whole, user journey is going to look like in a hospital, and like enough distance, plan the surgery room and all that stuff. So basically kind of mixture of architecture and planning, space planning use case. But the whole kind of thing about Shapes is that this is no code creation tool. It's collaborative, and collaboration is a huge power of Shapes, meaning that it can be 20 people ideating together and then creating a prototype, and then you can bring your users in and you can test your prototype, and you can only build later on in Unity or Unreal the idea that is proven, that you're really confident that this is going to be so meaningful to run in a headset. And it's also cross-platform. So the market is very challenging. And at some point, to extend people's time in Shapes, we also built our web version. So you can be in a headset. Some people can be in web, and you can still create together, and you can present. And if you go to the next slide, so that I'm kind of on time. Yeah, so it's already kind of a proven tool, and some incredible apps have been designed and prototyped in Shapes by bigger studios like Luge Interactive, like ThinkWriter, incredible game. And we have a bunch of case studies that explain why Shapes speed up the creation design process, how it helps to decrease the risks of launching your app, how you can run user tests before you actually go to Unity and build like just one idea. Famous apps like Trip and FeedXR, and also like Shapes enable indie teams. And by indie team, I mean like 2 people can build an app and launch it on store and even get a shout out at MetaConnect. And I'm talking here about like apps like Pencil or Piano Vision. So these are very, very small team, but thanks to Shapes, people without Unity knowledge, they could envision their app and then really save a lot of time in developing that app in Unity. And we have Unity plugin, and we can dive into that if you're interested. If you go to the next slide, and then when Shapes matured, basically they were like absolutely new market for us that we didn't plan initially, and but it makes so much sense. This new market is real world design, meaning that, for example, what Logitech did, that was a real world gaming conference, a huge gaming conference that took place in Germany. And the whole idea was like, how can we envision the venue, the booth of every sponsor before we build that in real world? So basically they used Shapes to build like a digital replica of that venue, which is again not a typical venue. It has a lot of futuristic type of booths, and then they invited their sponsors, companies like Puma or McLaren, in Shapes, and they were presenting the vision to them. Or you can like collaborate and plan your real world store and decide where items should go, and you plan like large scale events. I mean, it was surprising, but this is what enterprises are adopting the platform for. Okay, I think that's
Sorry to
yeah.
yeah. So I think we do
Be
have
out of time. Let's just
Yeah.
go to the very briefly to the video. And it's a very, and we can switch the sound on. I think it should start playing, just to show you how the creation process is happening. Again, very accessible. I don't know if it's playing. I don't see it.
There we go.
Okay, yeah, music is not required here, so you can switch it. Yeah, so just example of like how people can build games, and this is Castor Mania, a beautiful mixed reality game that was released on MetaQuest store. Yeah, the music is still on. And then they build entire UI system and interactions in Shapes. This is another example, like Adidas, immersive experience, AR experience that was built, and prototyped in Shapes. Yeah, but anyway, so we just show here in this video various use cases. It's very horizontal tool. You can think of it as like immersive 3D interactive PowerPoint. So, and yeah, so I probably stop here, but I really appreciate your attention.
No, that's great. That's great. Thank you, Inga. And I know we don't have time for too many questions, but I do have I guess I'd love to hear what do you think is the most compelling use case or applications of Shapes XR that you have worked on, and why?
Yeah, initially we thought that XR apps are the new mobile apps. So if you build any type of apps that is going to run on a headset, then Shapes is your go-to tool. This market is still nascent, so we like building game level design is a big kind of deal. But if you talk about real traction and monetization for Shapes, that's when people are building, trainings, and also various type of kind of like training is a big portion of what companies spend money into, and still it's enterprise market for us. And I would say that on top of training, that would be like planning showrooms, planning real world large scale environments. And by the way, universities, we have 200 universities that applied for Shapes licenses, and they introduced the tool as the future of design, to their curriculum.
That's exciting. Well, I know there's going to be time for more questions following everybody's presentations. Thank you, Inga. This is really exciting.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
Caroline, you got time
All
for
right.
one more question if you want with Inga.
Oh, okay, great. Great. Well, so I guess I wanted to ask, when you are first sitting down with, and it really depends on the prospective client, but how are you helping them to get started? What is this sort of ground zero?
Yeah, so basically Shapes XR is like a tool. You can think of it as a Figma or PowerPoint. So we have the free version on MetaQuest store, and people, a lot of like how it started, they discover Shape, they start using it. And then if they want to become really power users, we offer trainings, and we have like onboarding tutorials, and we spend time, with companies trying to have design critique sessions with them. So we never had any services before. We just launched services this year because we realized that adoption for any emerging tech, whether that's AI or XR. For large enterprises, they do expect that you help them kick off that initiative before they start hiring a lot of XR designers in-house. And with that, we now kind of help them build, their like digital twins, replicas, or environments. But then Shapes is a very intuitive tool, and we assume that they do any customization or they use the platform as is. So if you can learn the PowerPoint, how to make a PowerPoint presentation, most likely you will be able to build 3D immersive, interactive presentation in Shapes.
Right. Very cool. And I know Robin, it's interesting. We'll have some more conversation with Robin about the differences in services and licensing, because her
Yeah.
view has been through a number of different lenses, but in the gaming side of the world and building games. So I think that's a really interesting point on that. So thank you, Inga. All right, back to you, Matt. Right, back to you.
All right. And one thing I do want to point out, since again, this whole event is about how to create immersive technology. Shapes is a platform that allows you, those of you who didn't raise your hands when you said you're developers, to create immersive technologies. We have a demo of it in the room. If you actually want to try it, once we get back to demonstrations after the stage presentation, actually everybody who is presenting tonight has a demonstration in the room. So all of the stuff that you're seeing us people present about, that you're going to be able to try it all if you'd like to. But with that said, I'm going to invite our next two presenters up to stage while they make their way up here. So thanks again, Inga. Leanne Wagner is an experienced designer with a diverse background of professional work, ranging from startups to Fortune 100 companies. She currently teaches at DePaul University's School of Design and is the director of DePaul's Push Studio and director of the Spark Center at DePaul University. Chase Jones is a third-year student at DePaul University, working as a research assistant for Push Studio, as well as pursuing their MFA in game design. He has a passion for emerging technologies, queer culture, and video games as transformative media. And with that, take it away.
Hi. Thanks for having us here tonight. We are very excited to share what we've been working on. This is the evolution. This project started about 3 years ago. So I'm going to do a little bit about just telling you how it started and the impetus. Then Chase will tell you a little bit about where it is today and the technology behind it. You can go to the next slide. And the next slide, that's just our studio logo. Just a little bit about Push quickly. We are a studio at DePaul's Loop campus in the College of Computing and Digital Media. I hail from the School of Design. I've been there for a long time. We'll just put it that way. But the studio is really focused on giving students and faculty the opportunity to create equitable and ethical applications of emerging technologies. So we work with a lot of different types of XR, AR, VR, AI, whatever. We just got a BCI headset, brain computer interface headset that Addie is working with. So it's been really exciting. The whole goal, though, is to use human-centered design methodology, which is what I research mostly in my practice, into how do we start to develop new content, new uses and applications using human-centered methodology to really make sure that we're thinking about the people that are going to use these, the ethics that are applied to the new applications, things like that. So that's really what we're doing mostly in the space. We have kind of a team that does research projects and experimental projects, which is what we'll talk about tonight. Then we also have students that are interns that do for-hire work. We work with a lot of startups. We do a lot of interface design, integrating AI and things like that is a lot of what we're doing right now. So a little plug for the studio. Happy to tell you more about that. But let's keep moving. Like I said, I'm Leanne.
Chase.
Yeah, I think we had a good intro already, so we won't belabor this in our 5 minutes here. So go ahead. So we started this project, like I said, about 3 years ago. It came with another faculty member, Leanne Tran, who came from the University of Miami. She was working with their law clinic there. They had done extensive research around gender-based violence and found that there was a real lack of training in that space for police officers and folks in that capacity for how do you do trauma-informed interviewing. And so VR felt like a really great space to kind of use that as a space where you aren't going to re-traumatize somebody. You can practice over and over. So that's where we started that. You can see we started working with some of the Chicago Police Department here. I think these folks are from Buffalo Grove, this officer here. And we started a platform called Copilot. So Copilot is still an enterprise level platform, has a great distribution model for pushing to remotely. So we were kind of started here, but it is a kind of like a choose your own adventure. It's a scripted branching narrative. We learned a ton in this process to understand how to create the content for that, because you literally had to write out the whole script. So you can kind of see in the slides on the very bottom of this that it's difficult to see, but it's this very large a piece of the branching narrative. So when we worked on this, it was very much like you had an option of what you could say, and you chose that. We were really intentional on how we did that writing, though, for that script, working with folks with lived experiences, folks that had experienced sexual assault, improv writers, folks that really kind of helped us understand how to create that dialogue in a really responsible way from that perspective. Obviously worked really closely with the police officers as well to kind of understand how do they assess how well you do in these platforms. So the whole idea of this is to create kind of a training experience so you can practice these things and then have an assessment at the end to help you kind of refine how you're talking and how you're communicating. So it's all around soft skill training from that perspective. So we evolved from there after this. From testing with this, we found that a lot of the officers, this is what I would say, but this is not how I would say it. It didn't feel kind of natural. So we moved on, and I can go to the next slide, to build our own platform. Very creative in our naming, the CSVT, Campus Safety Virtual Training. So it went through a couple of evolutions before here. Before we came to Campus Safety and worked with them to do this training, we actually kind of really demoed this platform or started building it out with some of our English professors to understand in a really safe, non-consequential environment when we were developing out this new platform, because it uses all generative AI to create the conversation rather than writing out the content in this kind of very long form. So Campus Safety Virtual Training has worked with our campus safety officers at DePaul, as the name might suggest, to understand how to kind of take the same thing that we were doing with the Chicago Police Department to our campus at DePaul. We're looking at maybe not necessarily trauma-informed interviewing techniques, a little bit more of the situations on campus that are low frequency but high risk, things like theft, assault, intoxicated students, things like that happen. And really, it works best, we've found through testing, is folks that are either new to the college population or folks that have never worked in a security officer space before. Gives them the opportunity to kind of practice that. So we can go forward. We got a little demo or a little video of it that we'll talk about it. But because we're talking about content tonight, we wanted to talk a little bit about the process of how we built this, built the platform, and how we are training the AI and things like that. So I'll let Chase talk about that, because Chase is one of our lead VR developers. Has been with Push 2 or 3 years. Yeah, somewhere in there. Is graduating if anyone's looking to hire somebody. Can't say enough about,
I started with the project before Just Reality, and then kind of got to morph into this. So I've kind of seen the project grow, which has been awesome. But like Leanne was saying, a partnership with Campus Safety. And so as a human-centered design lab, we really want to make something for you, like not just about you, but like we're really integrating all of the expertise and the knowledge that like Campus Safety in this instance has given us. So in terms of like content creation, basically we work with them, say, hey, what would you like to see in a scenario? And they go, well, we could really use training for those high risk, low frequency. So something where like a student's phone has been stolen or they've been assaulted, where it's really important that the officer knows how to respond appropriately, even if they've never actually gotten to real life experience that. So we work with them, kind of say, hey, what would you like us to train on? And they provide us all these different materials that they use, called like general orders, which is like, when you're in this situation, follow steps A, B, and C. And then we take that and turn it into this kind of game loop. And so, yeah, in order to do that, we do things like storyboarding. This is the one for the theft scenario. It's basically just, hey, you're the officer, go talk to the student, now go talk to the witness, etc. And then I think next slide has the flow diagram, but so had to kind of adjust this a bit to fit on the screen. But this is one tool that we use to kind of lay out the story of it. So I know it's hard to read. Basically, it takes you from when you open the app and you're onboarding, you're selecting which scenario you want to do. When you're actually in the app, kind of doing the talking to the victim and the witness and that kind of loop. And then at the end, where it actually like grades your conversation, gives you feedback in that kind of whole flow. If you go back one. Yeah, and then I guess we'll get more into it later, but we use a software called Convey AI, which is a kind of all-in-one solution for these interactive AI-powered NPCs. And then we also use a chatbot, ChatGPT 4.0, that does the grading. Yeah, it's a really iterative process. We work with them pretty much every week, every 2 weeks to make sure that the scenario is progressing how they like. We can go to the next.
Yeah, so the storyboards, the flow charts, those are all things that we use in human-centered design pretty commonly to define software and other things. So bringing them pretty naturally into this space, working really closely, like you said, with our campus safety officers, and things like storyboards really help them understand how to give us feedback. Like, oh, you wouldn't do this here. You would actually need to go over there. Like that was a really lo-fi way to really quickly understand what that should feel like and really get valuable feedback. So that's been a lot of conversation with them to help shape what these scenarios look like and what is the common thing until we now can get feedback that they're actually in headset from our officers. And that's obviously another level of refinement. So it's a lot of iteration, as you can
So
imagine.
we're getting close on time. Do you have a video? Did you want to play it?
Yeah, go for it. So this is just a small clip of the theft scenario, I believe it is.
One of them.
Yeah. So this is a Unity environment. You'll just see you're going to approach a student and have a conversation with them once it gets started.
Still early prototypes. That's why this environment's kind of barren.
It's a little lame. Yeah, we know. We are working on some models of we have some models of places on our campus. Right now we're using stock just from the Unity library. The models, the avatars are all made by Ready Player Me. Great, very quick way to kind of generate avatars. We use something called Convey AI to generate the AI conversation. The conversation between you and the student or the victim is then recorded and then sent to the GPT-4 assessment model. So we've developed a matrix there that will assess that. We know from working with enough officers that you don't give them percentage scores because they get real competitive. So you give them, satisfactory, you kind of give them, and then we also, the GPT-4 model also generates, you said this, well, here's some recommendations on how you could improve your conversation and improve your skills. So ideally, the idea is they would repeat these things. So we're running a pilot this spring of this, with this. I don't know, I don't know if there's audio for this. I don't want to talk over it the whole time.
Hi there. Did you call campus safety?
Let's be talking.
No, I didn't call them. I thought they just came to check because, my phone got stolen. I'm a bit all over the place right now.
So still working on the refinement of the
understand.
models, but
Can you
it's been
tell me-
great because we can put it in front of the officers, like nobody's that calm when their phone gets stolen, so like we can crank it up, we can make the kids cocky, or I shouldn't say students cocky. So it's been fun to kind of understand how to adjust the personalities, and Convey AI is really nice in that it has, I think in our slides, we even had some screenshots of how you can kind of adjust the personality and how you do the prompting, and you build a knowledge bank up with all the documents and things like that. We can explain that more if anyone wants to know in detail. I think our 5 minutes is up.
Oh yeah, you're way past 5 minutes.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's fine. That's
Need
fine.
a timer up here somewhere.
Yeah, it's hard to do. That's all right. We let you go if you got a lot to say. So normally we would do a couple questions back and forth. We're gonna limit it to one, and I'm gonna actually ask you both if you can keep it within a minute. That'd be great. But the main question is, what advice would you have for any other students or beginners that are interested in getting started with creating immersive content?
I would say look at resources on your campus. DePaul's honestly leading the way in these emerging technologies. We have multiple labs that have these VR headsets that you can check out, people that are really excited to help you learn how to use them. And there's always people who are interested. So I would say find a friend, go to an on-campus event, and yeah.
Do you want to add to it?
Yeah, find an awesome lab like Push Studio. No. I think I got into a lot of it coming to events like this. So I think I always try to tell students, you live in Chicago, a huge major city. There's so much cool stuff happening. Come to these types of events. I think this is how I learned a lot about emerging technology a little way back. But
Excellent.
yeah.
Well, thank you very much. We will have you guys back up here for the Q&A portion. Again, if you turn the microphones off so that they don't echo. You guys did have these content creation best practices up there. I'm going to leave that up just for a second because that's going to go to the video stream. I think it'll go to the video stream. There we go. And at that point, I will also hand it back over to Caroline to introduce our next presenter.
Yes, and I want to make the intro a little quick because I want Robin to have enough time so that we can get into it and have a question or two. So Robin Mulder is an entrepreneur and a CEO and CTO and director with an extensive background in management engineering, whose Fortune 100 and 500 clients span healthcare, medical devices, education, manufacturing, and communications. And she's a pioneer of virtual and augmented reality. Robin led 3D 3-pound games into the XR space and the galactic planet destroying game Space Dragon for Rift, Slime Rancher VR Playground, and VR trainings in the simulations for medical and manufacturing applications. Robin is a wealth of information and talent in terms of that. And I want to have you take it away, Robin, because I want to get into it in a little bit. So take it away, and be sure to put your megaphone on because I've been forgetting to do that.
Megaphone on. Engage. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Caroline. We go way back, so she knows all of the shenanigans and how we get into a lot of different things. Like Inga, we've been doing this a very long time. We go back to 2016, and I've always been a view master and 3D anything fanatic. And so when VR came around as something that was a little more commercially viable in that time of 2016, 2017, a lot of us thought this is right around the corner. We're so there, it's just got to get this thing to just be mobile and we're good to go. And you could see where we're at. So a lot of us started doing a lot of VR training stuff, started developing applications and gaming that for us, our own fun stuff. Space Dragon was one of our first apps, but really the first thing that we did was just start experimenting with mechanics. Let's just start figuring out how this stuff works. Let's rip it apart, put it back together, systematize it, figure out a way to make it easier to use for us, just for us. And that led to deploying the movement system for the Vive and the Oculus original Rift series, which all kind of works the same way for the most part. And so this was way back in the day, and it had all these different movement systems in it, and it still does. So there's cards in there with like, how's the comfort level? What does it feel like? What does it do? How do you configure it? And if you're trying out something and you're just like, ooh, I don't know about this, had this movement system, I'm using the stick and people don't like it, and maybe this doesn't feel right for my app, just like 2 clicks and you're flying and you're using a different movement system. So really helpful in prototyping, experimenting, and then of course it is real code. So it can go carry all the way through the entire project to production. So that was kind of our early parts of where we ended up today with GrowKit Core, was experimenting around movement systems and figuring out how these things work and finding ways to make them better, use object-oriented design to make rock solid, fun stuff that we could just switch around quickly and experiment with, which led to things like Space Dragon, because flying is fun in VR. Why would I want to use my legs if I can fly? So we really into flight systems and flight games. Space Dragon was a very cutting edge game at the time. You're flying through the stars, you're blowing up planets. You were actually on a mission to save the universe from the evil AI. This was 2017. Little foreshadowing for the world there. So it's a really fun game. It's still available today. We're expanding it. It's actually got mixed reality components in now, so you can like fly through the planets in your living room, which is kind of surreal. And then we've evolved to many other apps. We've done a ton of work in medical and manufacturing, and you name it, we've done it. That space of building cool stuff for other people, with other people, for ourselves, all of these have led to us continuously trying to build a better production pipeline, easier ways to build things, ways to systematize, ways to onboard people on our team faster. Many of you probably have heard of things like, like a surgical team. And a surgical team works because everybody already knows what to do. They could go in and work together. Yeah, they also do practice together, but for the most part, if that's your job on the team, that could be your job on the team with any team. And we're trying to solve a lot of these, getting more people developing in VR, uh, just getting it to be easier for you to start. Right now, you have to learn so much stuff. You have to learn all about AI. You have to learn how to do an LLM. You have to learn, the movement stuff. You have to learn how to do touch, interact, and grab, and then spatial stuff and the UI. And it just goes on. 3D avatars, it's an endless list of stuff that people have to know to be able to build a cool spatial computing app. If we can reduce that burden and we can get you started with like, listen, we got the mechanics, you got the basics down, you know basically what you want. Now you could get it going. Now you could focus on the polish. Now you could focus on making it really high quality. So this is where we've landed with 3 Pound XR is we continue to do 3 Pound games with cutting edge games with Grocket, and Grocket is the game that we use in dog food, all of the core systems and libraries in Grocket Core. So when we try out something new because Meta has just SDK and we're like, ooh, what's this cool feature? We go figure it out. We put it in our core systems and libraries and we use it in our own products first before we say, hey, everybody, this is ready for prime time. So let me give you the quick video about Grocket Core. You want to click that? I think it's the next slide. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's an overview of the studio. Who can be sure? This video is much more fun with the music because it's all cut to the music, but that's okay. So what you can see here is the key points of what we're doing is we're giving you that low. Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go. So basically, we're giving you the. Oh, I'm getting a lot of echo, you guys. Okay, thank you. We're giving you the ease of low-code solution with click and configure components, stuff that we've already built a million times over and used in our own applications. Here you go. You can configure it the way that you need it configured. Click, click, click. And then you got your basics stood up. Now, if you go back and you're like, oh, I need to extend this. I need to make this more complex, or I need to build this out a little further. You have the source code. You can go in and modify it. You can extend it. You can be part of the community if it's a feature that you think that other people in the community would also be interested in. You could ask us about it. Maybe we'll add it to the library as well. So it's just this endless list of incredible tools that people could build anything they want really, really fast.
Hey,
If you
Robin.
think about,
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to
Okay.
just have you wrap up only because I want to ask you at least a question or two here. So go right ahead.
okay,
Sorry.
okay. So our goal here is to just get people being able to build stuff faster and focus on what you're good at. If you're a subject matter expert and you know your industry, you know what you want to build, but you don't know Unity, you don't know AI, you don't know all these other pieces, like 3D modeling, Blender, and all that. You don't know any of that stuff. How are you going to get from zero to a spatial computing company? And this is our solution: is to get you on that path and to get you accelerated so that you can be successful and leverage all the power and all the knowledge that you have, and not have all the burden of knowing all these other things that you have to do in order to build a spatial computing app.
Thank you. That's awesome. I actually, it leads to my first question, which is, you've been really kind of innovative in your work with hand tracking and mixed reality. And tell me, really, how do you think how do those technologies change the way you design and prototype things?
Yeah, it's fundamentally different and amazing too. When you talk about mixed reality in the classic sense of it's not just pass through, it's truly mixed. Like this furniture is here, seeing, understanding, and then you add hand tracking to that. Now we're getting one more step closer to the dream that we're all trying to get to, which is spatial computing should be a complete extension of my body, not me pushing buttons and pretending like all that. It should just be like how I go and touch this lamp over here. Yes, I still have to push a button, but it feels right, it feels natural, and I'm not craning over things. So when you have hand tracking and you're physically grabbing things, you're physically feeling it, you feel more natural. It's easier for people to be onboarded. The negative side is you get stuff like, grab this cup, and this is a virtual cup, person goes to grab it, they're not, they're going to go like this, so their hand's going to close. Well, that's not what happens in real life, right? So you get a couple of those funny moments like that. We've done a lot of research in like how to make things feel like you have haptics. For example, in our game Grocket, you'll sometimes feel like you're getting haptics when you're getting shots, and that's simply because the spatial audio is designed in such a way that I'm really trying to tap into the vibration of what you would feel had that had happened to you, which then it correlates to the somatosensory cortex in your brain that uses the same pathways, and the same neural pathways are used whether you're taking your hand and sort of rubbing it along something and you're feeling the vibration, or you heard it and you sort of think you felt the vibration because you heard that. So
Right.
we're all doing using a lot of tricks to kind of bring it all home for you and make it feel more natural. But it does affect design tremendously, and it helps a lot with onboarding because people are not afraid to put the headset on if they can see out, if they can put their hands on this table because that's really the table, even though you might have turned it into a treasure chest, but it's really physically there, and you're now interacting with an object. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do, and then you have to think about accessibility because now you're creating in spatial computing and you're being more natural about the way that you're designing and physical space. Make sure that you give people a way to get to like a quick menu or a quick way to access things so that if they're not going to go up and go to the wall over there and smack the wall because the little creature came out of it, they need another way to do things. So it
Yeah.
creates a lot of extra complexity, but there's also a lot of great opportunity.
No, that's great. And I'm so interested in that relationship and love the fact that so many of us here are talking about infrastructure layers of things. So I'm going to stop there because I want to allow time and back to you, Matt, but I really want to continue this conversation as we get into the greater Q&A. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you, Robin. Thanks, Caroline. Andrew, you want to make your way up here? So Andrew Toll is a freelance XR developer with a focus on augmented reality, playing multiple roles from art lead to lead dev. He and various teams have won multiple awards, building geospatial and educational games, cultural enrichment applications, and mixing live performance with augmented reality. Go ahead.
All right. I feel a little like the odd man out here because I am developing mobile AR and everybody else is doing all this very cool VR and XR stuff. So in 5 minutes, making mobile AR. I've been working in the XR space since about 2018, and I got into it for multiple different reasons. But one of them is I was living in a tiny house. I like to build things, and I had zero storage. I figured out with mobile AR that I could build gigantic things and put them in a tiny little box. That's actually my house on the right-hand corner and a prototype that I was building. So how do you do this? Next slide, please. So I use three main strategies when producing augmented reality. The first is the time-tested image targets, where you pick an image, you assign your content to that particular image. When a user points their device at that image, your content appears. This is fantastic for things like business cards, Christmas cards, or my personal favorite, murals, because you can make things gigantic. Now, the next strategy that I use is plane detection. This is when your user points their device at a flat surface, primarily horizontal planes, but vertical and instant meshing have been getting better over the years. Once that plane is found, it's used as an anchor and your content is placed on that plane. And this is great for putting your content into the real world alongside them. Add a shadow, fake shadow, or a shadow caster to that plane, and it gives it that little extra realism. Now, the last strategy is VPS, or Visual Positioning System. This uses a pre-scanned or a scan of an area and then your user's GPS location to start looking for visual cues of that particular area, and then assigns your AR content accordingly. This is great for geospatial games or when you want to guide people along a particular area. So how do you pick which one of these strategies you want to use? Next slide, please. You plan things, right? If you're working with a team, I highly suggest a design document so you're all on the same page. I know that's been brought up a couple times before, which is great. Or if you're working on your own, at least sketch out your app flow on a napkin so you know how things are going to go, or make some sketches or storyboards, which were brought up before. Once you've done that, pick your game engine. I primarily use Unity because it uses C# and object-oriented programming, which makes it a really comfortable environment. Then you want to gray box your experience. And by this, I mean use cubes and spheres to make your application work. Just make sure that it's fun. If it's fun with boxes, it will be very fun with cool looking assets. Next slide, please. Which brings us to creating assets. I use Blender and Nomad Sculpt for poly modeling and texturing. But when you are creating your assets, it's never too early to start thinking about optimization for your application. And by this, I mean keeping your poly counts and your texture counts low. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the base element of a mesh is a vertex. If you connect two vertices, you get an edge. And if you connect 3 or more edges, you get a poly or face. And when you're modeling, you can end up with millions of these. So you want to keep those low, or your AR application is going to grind to a halt. So just because you're keeping your poly count low doesn't necessarily mean that your model has to lack detail, because you can always add that back in with normal maps or height maps. So once you've got your models ready, it's time to start putting it all together. Next slide, please. Here on the left-hand side, you can see a screen grab of Unity. That's the asset from the previous screen. The gold and red image is a scale model of the image target that I was using for the live performance. And in this case, the blue cube is me. On the right-hand side, you can see a snapshot from the live performance, which has the AR model, the image target, and then me on stage. So once you've got everything working, there's one thing that you don't want to forget, and that is audio. So next slide, please. Now, you can use audio in a lot of different ways. On the right-hand side, this is a sound reactive mural that has objects move depending on the frequency band of a particular audio track, or you can simply use audio to enhance the visuals, like sound effects for that second slide. But in AR and XR particularly, as was brought up before, the more important thing is spatial audio. And this is placing audio so it feels like it's in the real world with your user. By that, I mean it will pan from one side to the other, or it will get louder or softer depending on their distance to that audio source. Now, the last two images there are a projector, and we used spatial audio to draw the user's attention across the street to the preview for the theater we were building the application for. Now, this works fantastic if you have headphones. It is terrible when you have just regular mics or regular speakers in your device, which we only found out through testing, which brings us to the next slide, please. test, 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 then test it again. No matter how well you build something, somebody's going to break it. When you are building your application, you create these unconscious biases of how the app is going to work. And the only way to get over those is to put your application into as many hands and onto as many devices as possible to find these out. Now, you want people to break things before you publish, because that way you can fix them before you go live, which brings us to the next slide, which may be publishing, which may be the hardest part of this entire process because you have to deal with Apple and Google. You will need a developer account for each of the platforms. You'll have to jump through each platform's specific hoops and then submit your application for review. Then once you hopefully get accepted, you have now published an AR application. And last slide. So go make something cool.
Crash course on development. Thank you. You pretty much hit it all too, so that was great. I guess I'll ask you to throw this one out there. Well, you pointed this out, so I'm going to ask about it. You are working on mobile as opposed to VR, so I guess what's drawing you or excites you more about working with the augmented reality compared to virtual reality?
That is a really good question. One thing that draws me to it is everyone here has a phone in their pocket. Not everyone has a headset. So barrier to entry is 0.
Show of hands, how many of you have a headset?
Okay, that's not fair.
I know.
We're at
All right, so I'm gonna throw, okay, so your background spans juggling, fine arts, game development. How do these different skills influence your approach to this?
That's another good question. And actually, this is why I wanted to bring up the gray boxing part of things, because coming from fine arts, I fall into the trap of wanting to make things look pretty before getting them to work. So I highly suggest make it work with boxes and cubes before you make it look cool. That's been brought up before, but I can't stress it enough.
You're going through questions fast, so this is good. I can keep going. What's one project that you've worked on that's really sort of pushed the boundaries of what you thought was possible?
So in 2019, a team and I were accepted to Niantic's first Beyond Reality competition. And we built a geospatial pirate game, steampunk pirate game. And really, as I mentioned, I like to make things big. Their whole thing was burn these phones. So we didn't worry about poly count. We didn't worry about size. We just made gigantic. It was a mix of dodgeball and Risk. So you literally had to, some of these ships were 100 feet long. I think there were a couple slides in there before. So when you were dodging cannonballs and shooting back, you had to run. So that was pushing it for me.
All right. Well, you might as well just, since you're up here, you might as well take a seat. We're going to have Alex and Leanne and Chase come back up. We're going to have the other folks in the virtual space get ready to talk, because ultimately this is the point. Hey, Ron, where's Ron at? Can you grab the microphone, please? This is the point where we get to the audience's opportunity to ask questions. So you guys will have to share 2 microphones between the 4 of you. So we can kind of put 1 microphone between each group of 2. Raise your hand and we will call on you. Caroline, I can see you. So if I see you waving in your camera shot, I will be able to tell that you have a question in the virtual space. And then Tom, if there happens to be anything that comes in off the live stream. So we, again, a little bit of crash course for those of you who have been here. We are operating right now in 3 spaces at the same time. We have the virtual space, we have a live stream happening, and we're also here in physical. Any of our audiences can ask a question. So who's gonna be the brave one that goes for, oh wow, we got 2 right up. Okay, Scott Voyer, I saw you first. And Caroline, again, if you wave your hand over your head, I'll see it.
Sounds good.
Check. Okay. Question for both Alex and the folks from Push. Can you talk a little bit more about your distribution and like what kind of, how are you showing this? Is this standalone, like, or tethered headsets? And like, how are both of your experiences being deployed out in, you know, the real world, if you will?
You guys want to go first? All right, go first. Okay. So for us, because again, with who we work with, this is usually their first experience doing anything VR related. So a lot of hand holding. So what we end up doing is once we've decided on a project and we're going through the development process and that's complete, we will purchase the headsets on behalf of the teams, depending on how many they need, and all the accessories. So usually that's the grips, that's the extended battery, it's the charging station that will always go with their headset wherever they decide to set it up. From there, there's instructions baked into any of the experiences, and we also have like a manual of sorts. We also stress with them that we will come on site to train what is usually their fan engagement team. And for most of it's still simple enough that it shouldn't take too much training once you've tried it a couple times. The thing that also helps is, Lauren was alluding to this earlier, but we use a platform called Manage XR. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it, but the interface is really nice for the experiences so that any respective team that's using it, they can go through any of the builds very easily and just have that play on repeat for that headset. Yeah, so the Oculus headsets are what we use these days. Back in the day, we were also Rift users, which was a lot more complicated and had a lot more equipment. We have not gotten into the Apple headsets just yet, mostly because from the price standpoint, teams are not going to want to purchase those on behalf, so the project costs go really high. The Oculus headsets are a really nice sweet spot right now.
Yeah, kind of similar. We haven't really had to worry about like deployment yet because it is more of a prototype. So in terms of getting it into the hands of like the security officers, I basically just load our build from Unity onto the headsets, run it with them. So yeah, a lot of hand holding for people who have never done it. But as we kind of, at least for our project, look to roll it out, those management softwares, like you said, Manage XR. We've also used Arbor XR, which is a similar one in the past. Same features. So yeah.
All right. So one of the things I realized I failed to mention this. If you're in the Frame virtual space and you have a question, there should be a little button on your indicators that allows you to raise your hand. And that way Caroline will know that you have a question. But with that said, I did see another one in the physical space behind you, Ron, with Ben. And then I'll get you there.
Yeah, this question is again more for Andrew, because I know you kind of mentioned how going into like the poly count and everything, but I noticed you didn't mention anything about like draw calls or anything like that with the Unity, with you especially at least with Unity. Could you go into more detail about with the draw calls and at least making sure that those are at a lower number?
So yeah, draw calls, in my limited understanding of them, are how many times Unity is actually drawing everything on screen per frame. So you want to keep those low, and you can do that by, there are a few things. You can build in culling masks for anything that's not off screen. You can work on limiting the number of materials that you have per model that you have in a scene. You can build texture atlases, so that a number of your textures are all loaded into one particular material so that it's shared between a bunch of different assets. We could do an entire discussion about optimization, and I'm not the right person to do all that. But in my limited knowledge, those are a few of the things that you can do to help out limiting those aspects. Do you guys have some extras that you want to add? Oh, no? Okay. No, right.
Caroline, you have one?
No, but there is a question I liked the question that you had asked in that audience, and I wanted to ask that to Inga
Can you
about
megaphone?
what was the project or the initiative that you did that challenged what you thought you knew about XR. And if you don't have anything for me on this one, I can
Some like
bunt it over
unique
to Robin.
challenge.
Yeah, just something that just blew your mind. I know
I think for me, it was very, very helpful to attend AW Europe. So it's a very different audience compared to AW US, like augmented reality expert in Vienna. Because there in Vienna, I met a lot of very traditional companies, brands like Mercedes or Red Bull or Gucci and companies like those, right? So they're all very, very interested in XR, but they are interested, to really bring some immediate value for their business, right? So not because of, in US, we also think a lot about innovation and we like invest upfront. So in Europe, it felt a little bit different. And then when I started to talk to them, I realized that, yeah, so the barrier is very, very high still. Even with Quest being very standalone headset, you just need Wi-Fi. It's incomparable to what we had to deal with Rift, right? And Manage XR and Arbor XR and Meta Quest for Business, all these MDM systems that are so kind of straightforward. Anyway, so the barrier was so high that they were saying, none of our like real business unit representatives are going to hold controllers ever. So it has to be just hands. None of those are like, it has to be like as realistic as possible. Everyone wants to see things like in real life. So really, really high fidelity. So basically they want to have the quality that we can only probably today afford on Apple Vision Pro, right? When everything looks like super, super high fidelity and great. And everyone was asking like, we want those kind of digital twins or replicas to be like very textured, very realistic. We don't want to have controllers, but at the same time, the price point for Apple Vision Pro is like not affordable to use at scale. And it actually was a great learning for us, and it pushed us to build Shapes Player. And Shapes Player is the mode that we can use with teams that are not designers, not developers. They have zero gaming experience. So nothing like even teleportation, something that we use a lot in VR, like how you teleport, how you scale yourself, how you move. It's too much for them. So, and it all has to be like super, super simplified. And this mode actually unlocked a lot of conversations for us. And it was like the challenge that I realized that it was not solved. Like accessibility was still not solved for like mass adoption and for adoption by like businesses that are not coming from innovation or emerging tech or gaming, backgrounds, and make it even more accessible and even more powerful in terms of how everything looked was like super important. And so it's a long journey still, and we have to do a lot from UX, UI perspective. UI has to be invisible. There should not be UI. Like it all has to be, as Robin said, like nature inspired, from every interaction they have.
Right. But I do feel that it's sort of everybody wants their cake and eat it too. And I'd love for Robin, for you to respond to this question in a way that just, because that's been your whole ethos, is really just making it, everybody here is making this process more accessible. But did you want to respond to that about in terms of like things that you found for barriers or things that just challenge your whole idea of making XR?
Every project becomes an interesting barrier because it's a different set of people with a different set of rules. And you go into one place and you're like, okay, you guys are up to speed with kind of gaming concepts and that sort of thing, at least you know these things. But then they're struggling with the headset, they're struggling with the shift from clicking and what they're used to, or struggling just with the logistics of having the time to put people in the headset. And it's very frustrating because you'll be like, yeah, but if you use this technology, we'd be saving you time. So, there's a lot of stuff beyond development that becomes quite challenging, whether it's the IT department who is hands off and I don't know what these headsets, I don't know what to do. And us developers are like, this is just another Android device. You have other Android devices, so it shouldn't be a big leap for you. So there's just piles of little pockets of challenges. And what I find so interesting is a lot of us have been through every one of these things. Like there's been a lot of projects that I've thought about spinning up to solve each of these individual problems, but we start to sort of self-organize as an ecosystem and go, what are you good at? Which part can you pick off while still doing your passion? We're always going to be building cool games because we love building games. We also love helping companies be successful. So us shifting a little bit into that of like, all right, well, let's stand behind the people that can carry the mission is a way to remove blockers. Because we would just make the app, or we would make the app with you, then we hand it off, you have no idea what to do. And then that's the
Yeah,
new blocker, is you're
it's
stuck.
yeah, you're absolutely right, and thank you for that. And I'm going to toss it back to you now, Matt. But I just think that whole idea, this is a great message for all of the students out there who are looking to become, find their place in the industry. And she's making a good point, is that you cannot tackle it all. So you have to figure out what areas you're really going to focus in on and what you're excited about. All right. Well, great answers, guys. And I would love to hear from Lauren in a little bit, but I'm going to turn it back over to Matt because I know you have a few questions in queue.
Yeah, I saw a question right over here.
Hi, my question for the Andrew. So I want to create the one AR application. I do have experience in VR and XR. So as you said in the presentation that we need to choose a platform between iOS and Android. So I do have an iPhone and the window. So as a development, we need to uh, uh, once we make one feature, we need to test it. So how that iteration get along with the window and iPhone? Is it that possible?
Am I understanding you incorrectly in that testing for each platform, is that what you're looking for?
I mean, I want to create the AR application for the iOS.
Mhm.
I do have an iPhone and my laptop is a window. So how this both combination go?
That one's tough. Yeah, it is very difficult. Find a friend with an iPhone. Find a friend with an iPhone.
I do have iPhone, but
or find a friend with a Mac. I actually had to buy a Mac to be able to. Sorry, I should have added that in. If you're developing for Apple, you also need a Mac to build that out for. So yeah, that's an extra step.
Yeah, I'll throw on that really quick. If you have a Mac and you have an iPhone, you have to basically be on the App Store and get a developer account. You can deploy directly to the iPhone without going through the store for testing purposes, but you do have to have what's called like provisioning profiles. So, basically they have to prove that it's your device before you can do it, is kind of what it comes down to. It is a lot of hoops. It is a big pain in the butt. Apple doesn't make it easy. They call it protecting their ecosystem, but at the same time, it makes it really hard to develop for them sometimes. Go ahead.
Thanks. This is probably for Robin first, because you brought it up in your talk, but really anyone can answer. We're building a software that takes real world sensor suite data and we want to visualize it 3D. There are probably a lot of ways to do this, but what is the biggest challenge in kind of building that extension from the virtual to the real world? We're talking like put on the HoloLens and see like radio frequency data, Wi-Fi data, like visualizing that. So kind of thinking through that. Maybe Robin, you can start.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, any of those things are just a new input into the system. So by having a consolidated input system, then you're just saying, well, this is what this means. So like look at it, like pull back and do a diagram of like the object-oriented design. Are you doing network as a sensor? Is that the jam?
I am not a 3D person. I am like the CEO of our company. So, I mean, the idea is yes, like have this network as an input to the software platform. I'm more thinking like, what are the biggest challenges from a technical perspective when it comes to the 3D? Like, is it building the actual assets? Is it visualizing the actual data input itself? Is it the coordinate systems? Those types of things.
Oh, it's any app. It's always going to be around what you really wanted, because it's really easy to go off and start like building some stuff and you're stumbling around, and until you put the headset on, sometimes you don't even know what you really wanted. And this is true almost in any design. You can sit down with clients and like talk about a website design, and they will tell you all this great stuff about what they want on this website, and then you show them what they asked for, and it's not what they wanted. So you're your own client right now. So the first thing is to diagram this out and say, okay, what are the inputs and outputs of these systems? How is this going? What do I really want this to be visualized? What do I want it to look like? Can I find some examples online of how that's going to look? So if I'm doing, you said it's frequencies, right? So if I'm going to be looking at this out in the space, so I just have to do a coordinate system, a mapping of what it is that I'm pulling in and saying, what does that mean? So there's a little bit of a translation there of how am I going to visualize it in the right scale compared to what it was coming into. So there's a bunch of those componentized things where you could say, well, I don't know what that looks like, but I could just call it a little box on this paper right now, and then we'll go figure that out. So that way you can say, well, this input goes here, and this is the output. I want it to look like this. Now at least you have a roadmap for where you're going to go. And then when you start to build it, you can keep referring back to that roadmap and say, oh, well, that worked, that didn't work, this didn't look good. Maybe we need to go a different direction.
And if you allow, I would add a little bit, Robin, to what you've said. I mean, you mentioned you're sure, so you're not sure, but I think the very first question that you have to ask to your team or to yourself is like, why do we need that interface to be in our like mobile AR? Like you mentioned, Microsoft HoloLens. So what are the benefits coming of, demoing that data in AR mode, and why we can't use just the phone and stuff. Like, for example, like your engineer has to have like hands available, and like picking the hardware platform like HoloLens is coming to an end to some extent. So it's also important like to spend time and decide like what is the platform you're building for. So is it like a headset, or it's like some AR glasses very limited that available? And then a lot of optimization have to be done. But again, I mean, as soon as you define, the super value that these are, kind of extended reality gives to your app or to your solution, I mean, that's the core. And then you decide what you really want to visualize and demo as a data. And if those are like a lot of 3D models, it's a lot of optimization because these are mobile computing platforms, right? Very limited in computational power. But again, does it make sense to have that? Or again, like the phone is enough? So that's the first question.
I like that you threw optimization in there too, because when he was talking about this, I was thinking that the data visualization would actually be pretty simplified objects, but it's really good point to be thinking about optimization because you're also talking about a lot of data that you're grinding
Absolutely.
through.
Yeah.
So you might end up with that situation where like, I'm gonna have to, only take this little window and this little window, and we're just gonna sample periodically. So your optimization has like 2 layers, which is really interesting.
Yep.
All right, so we've got one more in the room. The last thing before we get to the next question, I do want to chime in. Check out. Shoot, I forgot the name of it. I was about. There's the data visualization company. I'm blanking on them. I'll come up with it. There's
Bad VR. Bad VR. Yeah.
Which one?
Yeah. Bad VR. Yeah. I was thinking that too. I think
not
they're
Bad
doing
VR.
something
No,
very
there's
similar.
another one. There's another one I'm thinking of. I'll get to it in a minute. But we had a question in the back of the room.
Hi, so this is for Push Studio. Since you mentioned you're like a human HCI-centered research institute, like you also do work in that area. So one of the biggest challenges in XR design is like creating intuitive interactions that feel natural. So I'm just curious, like how do you approach user research and testing to like refine this UX for real world applications?
I mean, it's a lot of chase, first of all, just on his computer, like refining the prompts and things like that to like kind of fine tune it. And then it's just like you would do any other app, usability testing and, conceptual testing. We put it in front of it. Ideally, with this one that we're working on with campus safety officers, we put it in front of them and run tests and refine from there. It's just an iterative cycle, just like building a website, other things like that. From that perspective, I mean, does that answer that question, or are you looking for more specific?
Yeah, kinda. I just got curious because you mentioned that you're like focused on research and specifically like HCI. So I'm just curious if you've like tried it on with like a wider user base, or if you're actually looking into like how decision making works in XR spaces, which goes like beyond developing, which goes beyond designing, which goes beyond like all of these things to actually think of user experience in XR spaces. So that's the area that I'm interested in, and I'm wondering if there's like any work that you're doing, since you're going really deep into these empathetic environments that could guide like educational interfaces, if that makes sense. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess our approach is beyond just HCI, but human-centered design. So the idea is that we keep the people that we're designing involved in every step, right? From the beginning of like the scenario definition to the content development, throughout the whole thing. But from the research perspective, like from a learning sciences perspective and things like that, I would say that we're just getting into that space with the project that we talked about tonight. So looking at like long-term efficacy, so pre and post studies. So we're looking at, like I said, we might be running a pilot this spring. That's our goal anyways, to do some pre and to understand where the baseline is, and then do some post probably later this fall as things mature and we can kind of see. It's really difficult to test for these kind of empathetic type of in soft skills because it is a long-term kind of, it's not, you can test somebody immediately and then test them afterwards. They remember, do this, don't do that. But like to actually see the change in the behavioral kind of demonstration and how they actually experience it on campus or how they actually work with folks. I would say we're just scratching the surface of that with it. This is one of our probably furthest along prototypes to actually get to that space of thinking about pre-post and like being really, really specific around, more, I guess you could say, traditional kind of user testing in that sense. A lot of what we've done up to this point is conceptual testing, I would say more so of, does this feel like an experience that is believable? Does it sustain like the conversation, in a way that at least feels believable? And so we've checked those boxes. So now we're kind of moving into that next phase of like, I would say like long-term efficacy. Usability is done throughout the whole thing though, from that sense.
Okay.
I have something to say here because we are building like UX tool, but if you don't have time, that's fine. Because we did a lot of practical sessions to learn like how to improve UX for your, and like the whole user journey, for your XR apps.
It sounds
But
like we
anyway.
should connect those, you guys, together. It sounds like that would be a good idea, right, Matt?
Just responding to your question, you said the word like intuitive, which I think is really important, especially for this project where it's aimed at people who may have never used a VR headset. So like we said, like a lot of that testing, like how did you feel? Did you feel comfortable? And so one thing we've done is like, how can we reduce the controller complexity? So you only need like to know 2 buttons versus 4. Or we've tested like, actually walking in the space with a headset instead of having to use a control stick to move. So all those kinds of things that kind of lower the barrier from like, oh God, I'm picking up this crazy tool to, okay, I'm just gonna act as I normally would and the tech is gonna do all the rest.
All right, so we talked a lot about the human-computer interaction. The next thing I want to kind of throw at Lauren here is the storytelling aspect of it. See if you want to just take a minute and talk about how you approach the storytelling side, the narrative, I guess, the creation of the narrative for the users. You're muted if you're talking.
So after we settle on kind of catching the client up on the VR, the technology, what's possible, that's when we start digging into like what's important for the clients. What kind of story do they want to tell for their fans? And since it's always we're focusing on fan engagement, that's how we get to the importance of showing their history or talking through the story of what's to come. And so another example of something that we did was jersey reveals. And so talking through the whole what's the journey that the team wants the fan to experience when they're in the headset. And that's how we come up with the different experiences that are actually built into the headset. So it's not just one environment that they can go around and explore, but it's actually multiple different mini experiences within that experience as well.
Oops, I'm muting in the room. All right, so we're gonna get close to our closing remarks here. I'm gonna explain how this works so you guys have a few seconds to think about it. But the way this is going to work is each panelist is gonna have about 30 seconds just to frankly talk about whatever you guys want to talk about as a closing statement. Your choice. Wildcards are available. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of logistics of what comes next, give them a few chances because I just put them on the spot to say that they have 30 seconds to come up with something. But Caroline, the way it's going to work is each panelist is going to give their closing remarks about 30 seconds. Caroline will give hers. I'll give mine really quickly. We'll go through some housekeeping. In the physical space here, we have a lot of demonstrations. I would encourage you to try them. If you've tried one, go try another one. Pretty much everybody who presented tonight has a demonstration here. So I know we got Push Studios over there. We've got Rocket over there. We've got Shapes XR right here. We've got Reality Bites right there. And Andrew has a tablet at the back of the room with his experiences. So there's lots of different things to try. And I think I've stalled enough and given them enough time. So let's see the order. I think I will start with, we'll start right here.
My closing remark is I was excited to hear from the other panelists tonight that there are a lot of people focused on lowering the barrier to entry for often really me to even try to keep up with it, and all the students in the lab and things like that. But I'm really excited to hear so many people really focusing on that idea of like making it usable, consumable to like larger audiences. So yay, everybody.
All right, since you guys presented as a team, you can go next. But I won't split the teams, but I'm tempted to. So go ahead.
I guess my closing remark is just one thing I've really learned as a student, grad school in particular, is don't be afraid to experiment and to mess up. If you want to make games, make bad games. You know, it's way better to have a portfolio of 100 things you've tried and failed than one thing that you think is perfect. So yeah.
Excellent. All right, before we get to you, Alex, we're going to, we'll say Robin. Robin, you're next.
Then I'll have to unmute. I'd like to remind everybody that we're growing an ecosystem, and that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of coordination and organization and communication, and level. Just take the next step and go to all the conferences. Do whatever you can. And reach out to people. So you get our LinkedIn, say hi, follow our stuff, just like our posts, go crazy, get involved, and just become part of the conversation.
Love that.
All right. Also, Reality Bites is next in the physical world here, but we're going to start with Lorne. Go.
I like to echo some of what's been said already with regards to lowering the barrier to entry. I think that goes both for the technology itself and building of the environments and the spaces. So, I mean, 8 years ago, we were talking about Vives and Rifts, tethered headsets where you actually had to have gaming computers to power this stuff. Now, you can buy a $250, $300 headset and be just as powerful, if not more powerful. And the technology and the back end of building this stuff is becoming much more accessible as well. So definitely continue just exploring this. I think throughout the past 8 years, also, there's been a lot of times where it'd be like, well, this is just a fad, right? But I think the fact that we're all here, all of us don't believe that, and we haven't believed that, and it's been a long time. It's the 8 years that we've had Reality Bites, we've heard that time and time again that VR, XR, all of this is just a fad. It's going to pass. Nothing's going to come of it. But it's here to stay, and I think combining with other technologies like AI and the smaller hardware that's coming out as well. It's just going to continue to grow, and so there's just continue to be opportunities to be in this space and, like Robin said, be in this ecosystem and help build it.
All right, Alex.
Well, part of my final thought is I'm glad you called on Lauren first, because that was way more profound than what I'm going to be saying here. I think for me, it's been so long since I've been at 1871. We came out of this, granted, we only had a desk and the open floor there, but it's been so long since we were here. It's just really exciting to see how this VR AR meetup has grown so much. You have a virtual presence on it. The biggest thing I would say is it's great seeing how many young developers there are in the room here. Lauren and I really freak out about this a lot, that if we ever get to a point where we're scaling and we don't have enough people to work on something, where are we going to go? So it's very encouraging to see that many people here show up, stay engaged, and ask questions. And for those developers that are looking for work or just want to have a conversation about how to get started, please come to our booth. We'd love to chat you up about that.
Right. Inga.
Yeah, great to learn that there are a lot of young developers in the audience. So my takeaway would be, guys, there's so many apps already, and there are some incredible apps, and they're like, try as many as possible on MetaQuest Store, learn from the best creators, and write down what felt magical, what felt very intuitive. When I started, there was nothing existed for any type of interaction, and we had to invent and fail and reinvent. So now, there's so many incredible things, and you can really learn from the ecosystem. And even if you know Unity, or you're like C# developer, like whatever developer, like Unreal. Anyway, so it's super important to immerse yourself as early as possible if you're building an XR app, because transition from flat screen to the headset can cost you a lot and can be very expensive. So immerse as soon as possible, try as many apps as possible, like learn from them, and experiment. So it's really possible to launch your game on MetaQuest Store like within very limited amount of time and very limited resources required, because the tools and everything is there. Like great headset, great tools. Nothing should stop you from trying.
All right, Andrew.
Okay, last again. So first off, I'd like to echo what the other speakers have been saying. It's really exciting to see this many developers in the space. It has never been easier to create XR applications, but that doesn't mean it's easy. So please come up to us and learn from our mistakes. Happy to chat about all sorts of things. And I'm really excited to see where XR in general and AR is going. So yeah, come chat.
Thank you. Caroline.
I think I just have a word that I'm thinking about through all of these different opinions and perspectives, and that's co-creation. I think what's so magical about where we are and where we're headed is that we have the capability to be co-creators, whether that's on a platform, in a space, dynamically, and that's remarkable. So that's all I got to say. It's just it's a really great evolution of what's happening and what's to come. So thanks.
All right, so I'm going to throw one sort of question out of you. How many of you guys are familiar with a game called Gorilla Tag? Okay, I'm going to ask this reason for a reason. You guys familiar with Gorilla Tag? Anyone up here? Okay. The reason I bring that game up, that is the first thing that person ever developed. The developer of Gorilla Tag is a guy named Kestrel. I know him as Lemming because I used to play Echo Arena with him. Gorilla Tag is the first thing he ever developed. It is now the highest grossing VR game ever, over $100 million. It's the first thing he ever built. So yeah, when you learn about the fact that, yeah, you can be a first-time developer trying to build something and be successful at it, absolutely. I will say one of the things that made him very successful is, number one, he used a very unique motion that no one else has replicated in how the people move around. And number two, he tested constantly with users. He basically let the community of people that knew him from playing with him test his game and try it and go over and just So yeah, everything that you guys have said here, if you're new, jump into it, try it, test over and over. People will use it in ways that you hadn't thought of. But definitely get started, use the technology. You will learn how to build the technology a lot from using the technology, but hopefully jump into it.
And Gorilla Tag's Locomotion is open source. So you can just use it.
That's right. And they're building something else new that's even really cool. That's really cool. If I don't know if, or I don't think Orion Drift is released yet, but it's really neat if you get a chance to try it. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to play a little interactive game with those of you who are left. So really quick, I'm going to ask everybody to please raise your hand and keep it raised. It'll come down. Oh, come on, everyone. This is fun. All right, cool. So how many of you keep your hand raised if you think that this program was actually worth spending your time here tonight? Waiting to see who puts it down. All right, awesome. Keep your hand raised if you think this program would be worth paying $5 to attend. $10. We still have free beer. The beer is sponsored. So I just saw one hand go up higher. Great. $20. Okay, I like honesty. Keep your hand raised if you think that Goonies is the best movie ever. I saw hands go back up. That was great. All right, what's that? Is Goonies the best movie ever? No. Okay. All right. Cool. So plain and simple, guys. We don't like asking for money. Nobody does. And we hate keeping you stuck raising your hands. But ultimately, we do want to keep this program going. We want to keep it free. We are trying to attract more sponsors. I'm leaving this up here. This is our donation link. I will put it back up at the end of the event. But the one thing I'll say, plain and simple, if you don't feel up to it or if you're unable to support us with money, please share this. The more we grow this event, the more we will get a lot more eyes on it. And frankly, that's the more awareness we get around this technology and its capabilities. So I'll have our social links up in a few minutes, along with our donation QR code at the end of the event. Please consider at least sharing. If you see our stuff on social media, we're going to try and post a lot more on things like Instagram. We may even touch TikTok. But we're going to try and get the word out a lot more. We want to grow this event. The attendance we had here tonight was awesome. I think it probably came closer to beating almost all of our events last year with the exception of Demo Day. So it's great to see you all here. And with that said, I want to bring up the fact that we have a Demo Day. So we did an event here. We do this in June, try to do this around June, around the time of Augmented World Expo every year, kind of a local preview where there's no stage presentation, there's none of us talking. This is literally just put stuff on and try a lot of tech, and we try to fill the room with as many examples as possible. Last year we had 13 I think examples in the room. We were in this space, and the biggest problem that we had was we didn't have enough space. So we have doubled our space, actually a little bit more like tripled our space. We're going to be hosting it this year in June on the 4th at IIT. We are looking to have probably 25 to 30 different companies exhibiting their technology. I think we had, 12 different types of technology in the room last year. We had a new haptic company. We had Lenovo headset, Oculus, Magic Leap, you name it. We will try to have as much technology as we can in the room and as many different experiences as you can imagine. So if you know anybody who's looking to show stuff off, or if you know someone if you're connected with someone like that, please make an introduction and plan on being really busy on June 4th, because we're going to also try to run it longer. It's going to be a longer day. We're not just going to do 5:30 to 8:30 like we've done in the past. We're trying to see if we can get it to actually start at noon and run it until 8 p.m. But maybe 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. That's all coming. Just wanted to say, put that on your calendar. Be aware of it. Here's all of our socials and all of our information. Again, follow us. Thank you again to all of our presenters. I want to give everyone, please give our presenters a round of applause. We want to thank you guys. We hope to see you again next month. We're going to do one more sort of general topic before we get back into specifics on industries and other technologies. So this month we talked very generally about how to create immersive technology. Next month we're going to do an industry outlook. So where have we been? Where are we going? And we've got a couple of experts on this already booked for this. I don't want to necessarily share, but we do have, I will say, some very, very high profile industry veterans who are going to be on the panel next month. But with that said, we hope to see you and thank you very much. And we still have demos and we still have beer and we still have snacks. So hang out, enjoy, and please try some technology. And I look forward to talking with you all now. Thanks again, Caroline. and to all of our, Ron and Tom for basically making this, dealing with all of the garbage that it takes to make this actual event run in 3 spaces. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Inga and Lauren and Robin, so much here in the virtual space. And thank you, everyone here who joined us. And yeah, really appreciate it. And I know it's kind of a late night for some of us. So yeah, appreciate it. It's been great.
All right. Caroline, I'm going to mute the virtual room in this space, so you guys are free to talk. Again, Inga, Robin, Lauren, thank you very much. And thanks everyone else in the virtual space.
Sounds good. Thank you. Well, I won't keep you guys any longer. And I hope you guys have a great night. And Robin, give a big shout out to XR Women. For those of you who didn't hear, check out xrwomen.com. You got to see what all the cool stuff is going on there. And
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
have a
yeah. I
blast in
gotta.
Sarasota.
There's gonna be parties.